All right. Hey, most leaders don't realize it, but the area of their business they understand the least, sales tax and financial operations, is often where they're losing the most control. Today's guest, Holly Hoffman, aka the sales tax lady, has spent 15 years inside audits, tax law, and advisory, helping companies turn that confusion into clarity and control. Welcome to the show, Holly. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Look, we were talking a little bit offline here that I kind of knew someone that was in your space, but this is so cool to meet someone because this is a rare thing. Like you do something really special, really unique, and I'm very excited to have you on because I think our audience could really learn a ton of some of the nuances that's going on in this sales tax world and maybe not paying attention to it as much as they should. So, would love to understand kind of how the business started? Were you in corporate America grinding away, learning your craft, and then went on your own, or did you come out of being a CPA right into this specialty? What's the journey initially start with?
Well, my journey was long, actually. I worked in corporate America for probably 14 years and then realized I hit my ceiling before I had a degree. So then I finished my degree and went to work for Wisconsin Department of Revenue and audit because I really liked audit. And while working in audit, Um, I decided to specialize in sales and use tax because not many people know sales and use tax. So why not make myself useful in a underutilized space? And while working at Department of Revenue, I was doing a lot of taxpayer outreach because my background is a lot of speaking. So I ended up taking over as head of the Wisconsin Department of Revenue Speakers Bureau. So I was out traveling the state of Wisconsin, actually training tax professionals and businesses on sales and use tax law. I progressed into a higher level role at Department of Revenue where we implemented sales tax law changes, and I became the contractor sales tax specialist for the state. I was the expert in that area. I did all sales tax law implementation, but I was a contractor expert. And we wrote publications, articles, administrative code rulings, responded to taxpayer questions, things like that. And then I was running the Speakers Bureau. And when I was out speaking to tax professionals and businesses, I realized no one knows the tax law. And when I was speaking, I wasn't allowed as an employee of the state to advise. I couldn't even refer people to a professional that I knew sales tax, which wasn't many. And I realized in 2019, I don't want to do this. The state was moving away from education. And I thought, wow, this is this is not where I want to be. I don't support where the state was going. So I decided to leave the state and start my consulting company and basically do what I was doing for the state, but more freely and be able to educate actual businesses. So that's what I did. I left the state, created my consulting company, and my goal was to help businesses with compliance and implementing compliance and do that. And then I provide free education. I speak as much as possible for people to provide that education, but it's best yet to provide that education within the business, applying it to their specific adaptation of whatever their business is, because no two businesses are alike, and provide that guidance as they're working their business.
It's interesting. You said something about the state deciding to go away from education, which you would think would be the complete opposite of our government. Should be educating us in this big book that we have to read of laws and taxes and all this stuff. So, and they keep on growing that book. But interesting. But hey, look, that's the entrepreneur in you, right? That saw a gap, saw an opportunity, saw the ability to be out in the marketplace teaching people now and helping them. So, and then you mentioned, there are different because I'm in C&I. I'm a banker and looking for acquisition opportunities and all the types of these things that are bolt-ons and this, that, and the strategy. But nobody talks about sales tax. There's just kind of a thing that happens because you're selling, right? And I've heard of intrastate and interstate and local community, municipality, and all that type of stuff. So it's interesting that you decide to plant your flag there. When you did that, obviously you came from having some authority with your background. Was there a hard transition going from a government employee, meaning it kind of had it built in that mechanism of authority, to transitioning in your own brand and sharing the message that, hey, if the state's not going to educate you, better get educated, but now you have to pay me directly to do something like that. What was that transition like for you?
Actually, I know this is going to sound weird, but when I was out auditing, I just have a different way about me. My whole life, the way my personality is, when I work with people, I'm always learning from people. I respect everyone at every level because I feel like you learn so much and everyone has something to teach you. And I think it's the way I was brought up by my parents that when I was out on audits, I was so respectful of the businesses that I worked with and the people that I worked with that they were they always felt like I wasn't from the state, that I was an in-between person and that I was
Mm.
there to help them. And even though I was assessing them, I was very respectful and they didn't see me. They knew I was from the state, but they didn't see me as from the state as the bad person. And I really left them with a true understanding. I was very educated about the tax law and left them in a very educated position. They knew what they needed to do going forward, but that was my passion. And so when I was out speaking, I was the same way. Like I always got everyone their answers, I always followed up with everyone. And so I had this high level of credibility. I built really good relationships with associations. And so when I left and started my consulting company, everyone was a huge supporter of that and was ready to work with me. A lot of the companies that I worked with that I have been providing rulings were right there ready. Like, we definitely want to work with you. One of
Mm.
my mentors is the executive director of an association that I used to work with. And um, she was absolutely like, oh, I'm so excited that you left the state and that you're working on this side. And I'm 100% behind you in your business. And so it just was I feel really bad for other businesses that start from scratch because it was like my business was like a box.
Well, and there's something to learn from that, right? I affectionately have people on called intrapreneurs, right? In fact, I call myself that right now when I'm working for a bank or working for someone, because you have that mindset of a business owner. You have the mindset, hey, service is king. Like, treat your people right, have good ethics, approach it with empathy, deliver value before you ever expect a dollar to come back to you. So, you
Right.
were in that mode. And like you said, you referenced your parents, which is so cool to have that background. But then you saw yourself in the marketplace working that way. And wow, what a cool transition. And you had built-in clientele and those types of things. So, all right, tell us the first, probably 60, 90, 180 days, obviously it's always to go from paycheck to building your own income stream is a little bit different. And you had a nice ramp up period that you didn't have to worry about so much of promoting yourself, marketing because people were supporting you. What was that transition like for you then? Did you already research prior how much value in the marketplace this might have as a consulting fee? Did you go straight to a retainer? Did you go to a monthly subscription? What was kind of your process in that thought pattern?
Well, I had been thinking, I mean, I didn't, I guess in the back of my mind, I had been thinking about creating my business before I left DOR, but I didn't, I guess it kind of happened fast. I mean, while you're working at the state, you're not really allowed to pursue outside um, opportunities. So when I left DOR, I had in my heart an idea of what I wanted to do, and it was totally different than anything that existed outside. So normally CPA firms and accounting is out hourly, billable hours. And I didn't want to do that because what I saw from working through the Speakers Bureau was that people really needed help and training. And so I wanted to provide more of like a training resource and a support. And I wanted people to feel the freedom of coming to ask for help. And I wanted to be available as needed so that they would get help as issues came up, because that's the only way to be of true service. And my prior experience of working in corporate, I had done accounts payable, accounts receivable, billing, all of that. And I had done corporate training from Sarbanes-Oxley and that kind of training in the corporate world, is that you had to have the opportunity to train where you could apply it to real life experiences. And if you couldn't do that, people wouldn't really connect and it wouldn't really stick. So I wanted an opportunity where whatever I did, people were asking questions that applied to real invoicing or real uh, scenarios.
Hmm.
So I came up with an idea that it would be like an annual contract for a set fee. But my initial mistake was that I called it training, and I was told through marketing experts that you had to pick a niche. And so I picked contractors as my niche because I was a contractor. That's what I was known as. And so I called it a training contract.
Hmm.
Well, contractors don't like training and they didn't have time for training. So that was the wrong way to go. And so it was after the first year, and then COVID hit my first year. So, because I started October of 19
Hmm.
and I did a conference and a trade show at the beginning of 19 or beginning of 20, I'm sorry. And COVID hit and everything shut down. So that was my experience. But anyways, but I was billing it as training and that didn't go over well. So I did pod, podcast thing, and I brought on guests, and I knew quite a lot of high level people in the sales tax space. So that worked well for me. Uh, getting, being active and getting people to see me and some credibility. And then I also rethought, worked with some people, worked with some clients, and reconfigured my product and rebuild it as sales tax audit protection.
Hmm.
And that changed it. It was still the same thing, but people were more willing to buy sales tax audit protection plan than training.
Hmm.
And and that was it. And then it started flying off the shelf, and now I'm trying to get people to understand that I'm not just an audit person. I'm not just protecting you from audit. I mean, when I'm out there, I'm training all your staff, whether it's accounting staff or not accounting staff, that I'm doing a lot more for your company because it affects a lot more to your bottom line, to your profit. And I'm finding so much more. I mean, when I leave a client at the end of the day after a session, they're like, holy cow, this really, I mean, you've saved me millions. I mean, I should work on a percentage. This saved me millions. I have millions. This is hundreds of thousands. This is tens of thousands. Do you realize what you just did? And I'm like, yeah, I know. Don't rub it in. But it's great because sales tax affects so much. And I don't think businesses really think about the impact of properly managing their purchases and their sales and exemptions and um, having their employees properly working together and coordinating and strategically planning their purchases, their uses, their sales, the exemptions, and making sure things are mapped correctly in their accounting system. And understanding that their income tax accountants who are not on site and are not in the weeds of their records aren't looking at the details. They're trusting that the on site employees of the company have it covered and aren't double checking their work. So, someone like me who actually comes in and works with the employees does check that and double checks and cross references reports and streamlines reports so the employees aren't spending hours doing work with reports that aren't tied to anything. It's just crazy. And the owners are like, I didn't know this happened. So it's really great. And then I love seeing um, the faces of employees and owners that are see the results of what we do and um, showing them documentation of this is why we did this and this is reference materials so they're not lost. Sometimes, you go to training and you hear stuff and you're supposed to be able to understand what someone told you and you don't want to admit that you're lost, but then to have someone follow up and give you documentation and cheat sheets that you can follow and be there if you have a question, that's, money in the bank.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then the other nice thing about it is um, that this is something that the owner, it's value to the owner and the business because the business obviously grows and develops. But then each employee, this is something each employee takes with them. They're developing and growing, and then the employee morale is better. And something else that I've seen businesses hire me because they have internal strife because departments can't trust each other. But we build systems and reporting structures that then you can trust the data in one department to the other department.
hmm. Tons of layers there. And I love that riff that you just went on because I think there was so much to learn over the context that you put it into. Initially I thought, oh, okay, I think she's sharing a train to trainer model, meaning going into CPA firms and you're kind of adding a value add to their services. But it sounds like you not only did that, but you also went directly to clients. And do you have a mix of that portfolio where you train the trainer per se, bring in a ton of value so that the people doing the CPA work from the day to day, even right now, well, it ended March 15th for the extensions for corporate, but Um, that's an arena, but it sounds like you also have developed where you go direct. And has there ever been a situation where maybe you have a CPA firm that you're working with that also happened to have that client that contacted you directly, in that sense, or how did you separate those two?
I usually work directly with the clients, and if there's a client who has a CPA firm, so I only do sales tax,
Hmm.
and so almost, well, there's not any of my clients who don't have a CPA firm that they work with, and I will loop in their CPA firm and share information, of course, because I work with them nicely, and it's a great scenario. Um, and then there's times where I have an agreement with a medium-sized CPA firm in Wisconsin, and they have decided we are going to refer all our sales tax clients to you. So they refer all their sales tax clients to me. So that has worked well for us. And then, but I generally work directly with the client, because if you do through someone else, it's hard to
Hmm.
like play the telephone game with sales tax and what the facts are. And then it takes too long to get the information through each other. So I do answer one-off questions as a professional courtesy to um, my colleagues. So I'm the chair of the state and local tax committee for Wisconsin, WICPA in Wisconsin, our tax association. So my colleagues, I'll answer one-off questions to them about sales tax issues, and I will do that to other folks as a professional courtesy. If it gets too in depth, then I'm like, hey, now it's a little much, but so there's things like that, but
Okay.
generally I'm working directly with the end customer.
Okay. So CPAs became more of a great referral source per se, right? And
Mm-hmm.
bringing you in for an area that they don't really concentrate on. They don't have the resources. They don't know have the knowledge. So you took that experience of being at the state level and brought that into the marketplace. Neat, neat. So ultimately, did you decide? I know that you never wanted to be hourly in billable hours. What have you ultimately decided on? Has it been a retainer? Is it, like you said, a yearly subscription? What's kind of the methodology between your revenue component?
Yeah. So I do for the compliance, I do an annual contract, and it's either a state or a multi-state, and it's a set price for the whole year, and then it renews. And most people, once they hire me, they keep hiring me. And then I do, if you haven't hired me and you want to hire me for audit defense, that's a retainer, and then that is hourly. Um, and then I do other things like voluntary disclosure agreements. If you haven't hired me for the compliance stuff, voluntary disclosure agreements, you can hire me for that for a set price, depends on what it is. And um, the if you are multi-state, the compliance doesn't include filing. So filing is per return. Um, and then I can do exemption certificate management, stuff like that. So, so
Okay.
some of that
So
isn't hourly, it's just per item.
yeah, and you got to a point where these services had some sort of value based on the time that you actually do spend on it, right? So you have a multiple of profit built into it, and ultimately, this is an interesting business model, right? Because you took the knowledge that you were able to get from education, from workforce, time in the field, and converted it to something that's very needed, but not always, thought of. So, marketing wise, how have you challenged yourself in that sense, and has it changed? Obviously, the initial push was, man, an incredible support of the people that knew you, but at one point or another, that does dry up. Did you continue that sense of having those people that initially started you kind of continue to refer? Was it now clientele that were going, oh my God, I'm saving tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars? Did they get so excited they referred you? So what was your marketing plan developed over the years?
So my marketing plan has stayed the same for the most part, because I do a lot of public speaking
Mm,
and I work with a lot of associations and I continue to do that. And then I'm continuing to grow what associations I'm working with. And that really is a great resource, because you're continuing. The other thing is that people are retiring and new people are taking over, and that has continued a growth um, spurt. That's something I didn't really think about,
mm,
that people are moving jobs and retiring, and that has created a different a legacy of job new growth. But the other thing I have done is a PR campaign, and that has really helped um, with getting my name out there. And I do trade shows and speaking across the country. So really, my speaking is in education is my primary um, way of getting clients, because for me, getting in front of people and educating them on what I do is what draws them in. Like before that, they're kind of like, oh, I don't know what she does, and I'm not sure I need that. Or before people talk to me, they're like, oh, I don't know if we really need Holly's services. Um, but then once they start hearing about, one of the big things that I do is the education, employee education. And nowadays, what everyone's facing, and this is why the state went away from education, is that we have a lack of available, trained, and people experienced in accounting. So you'll see that CPA standards, that's a big thing in the news, is that the standards for obtaining the CPA certification, they're looking at reducing it or changing what requirements to sit for the CPA exam to increase the ability, the pool of people that can get a CPA. And I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just saying it's just that we have fewer people and fewer experienced people. And CPA firms are struggling with lack of people. And the state is experiencing the same thing. Right now, the state of Wisconsin is at half staff for auditors. And
mm,
so they're struggling to get auditors. And it used to be that 80% of DOR audit staff had at least 10%, 10 years of experience. Right now, DOR audit staff, more than 80% has less than 5 years of experience, and that includes supervisors. So
mm.
it's very inexperienced. So
So
go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
So it's the same thing's happening in private enterprise. And so to have someone like me who can come in and train someone, like one of my mechanical contractors, they hired a manager, a CFO, and she came from manufacturing, but they said, hey, no problem. We can train you because we have Holly. So she can train you on sales and use tax for contracting. So we can bring you on, get you up to speed. We have Holly to train you. So they were comfortable with bringing her in because she had all the other skills, but I could bring her up to speed on sales and use tax and get her trained in. So they were comfortable with bringing her on. But otherwise, you're limited on your choices for hiring. And then what do you do? And the companies don't have the time for training. And then what do you do for the questions of the staff underneath in the meantime? Well, they had me answering the questions.
Hmm. So this brings up an interesting point. I mean, and I'm assuming you've probably faced this or been asked this, but with the advantage of AI and things that are happening, and the ability to grab data, and I appreciate the reaction. What are your thoughts? Like, if a workforce is depleted and we have this interesting tool that sometimes can not be right all the time, and depending on the sources it's referencing and all that stuff, it could be a bit off. So you'll always need supervision, or at least up to now, you still need supervision. I think I keep on hearing today is the dumbest AI will ever be today, and it only gets smarter every day. So there's got to be an inflection point, right? So what are your thoughts on, if Holly Hoffman can't be everywhere, have you thought about also a book or some sort of FAQ on your website, or something that's automated that they could tap into resources, stuff like that? Or have you already thought of that, or are you thinking of that and maybe implementing AI as a tool? What's your thoughts about behind that?
So I'm playing with AI for sales tax and it's horrible.
All right.
So don't, please do not use AI for sales tax. Even when I give AI specific, like my own PDF of sales tax info
Mm-hmm.
and ask it to like put it into a nice summary, it changes it incorrectly. So please do not use AI for sales tax at this point. It's not good.
Fair. Fair.
Um, but I continue to play with it to see because I'm just testing it because it's fun. But do not use AI and do not Google sales tax information because it's wrong. Even sales tax rates, I had a client doing that and that is wrong also. So do not Google or use AI for sales tax. Both wrong. You
All
have to
right.
go to the DOR websites, the state websites to get the tax rate information. So just so you know, for your audience information. But I am working on a platform, a training platform. I have one already that I'm building and trying to get that set up and established. So I've been working on that. Also using interns, and so that's a struggle in itself, but so working on that to get that together. So I am working on that, and it's a pretty robust platform with videos and a database and all sorts of great things, interactive and everything. So yeah, and there's so many new tools to build that as I'm building it, more stuff comes out to make it even better, and then so it's fun. So yeah, I'm working on that to have that available for clients to use, and when that comes out, then they would be able to track their employee training on there and everything. It's really great tools. Yeah, I'm working on that.
Interesting. Well, I think people should be super glad that you're working on, because I think we talked offline that there is only one of very few that know what you know. So this is very unique Go for CO community. I mean, it's not something that every, CPA knows, every, CFO knows, like all these types of financial people. I'm a commercial banker and, I just thought, hey, it's a number that you find out that you're supposed to do 7.85, 6.24, whatever it may be, right? Like, and you just click it in there into the process and that's it. You just set it and forget it. But obviously, there's not a set it and forget it situation here. So, Go for Show community, if you're an owner, a business owner, someone that's a CFO, someone that's a CPA that would love to work with Holly, I mean, I would be listening in big time right now and hoping for some of those tools because Holly can't be everywhere either, right? So
Right.
that's one of the cool things. I know some tools out there like you ever heard of Lightspeed VT, Lightspeed Virtual Training? That's it's one of the innovators of what you just said, which is video, and it has some reference points, and they're building an AI to it, but it's been around forever. So anyway, but cool stuff. So look, we've talked about marketing and some of the unique ways that you went to market, especially with that initial, support that you had. We talked about entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur mind, and then extending it and going entrepreneurially. You've built out a firm, a consulting firm. From a hiring standpoint, at what point did you feel like, okay, I need to kind of expand myself here? Or have you used independent contractors? Have you brought in people that learn your stuff and you kind of certify them to be out in the marketplace doing what you do? What's been your strategy of growth for you personally in your own consulting firm?
So I've been using interns. I'm located in Stevens Point, and we have UW Stevens Point here. And so I've been using interns from the university, and they've been excellent. So that's been extremely helpful to me. And so looking to train and hire on some of my interns. I've been looking at possibly bringing on someone who's already trained in as a CPA, maybe across the country, but a little hesitant because they want, half your company and, your arm and your leg as part of that. So I'm not sure about that. So um, hesitant about that. But yeah, so I'm very happy with my interns at this point and working with that. I like that better. So so far been okay with that. But
So
in
sorry to cut you off, but then I guess from a framework, the interns are doing some of the legwork. Is that so? Educate us on kind of how you've set up the firm because, again, one of the challenges of interviewing 400 plus, CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs that we found at the Go for CEO channel in our community is, there is a sense of sometimes when you're a solopreneur and you've got your business, you got this incredible wisdom, incredible knowledge in your brain. But then, which I feel like your body language is telling me through the screen here, like, hey, I haven't found someone that does it like me. I haven't found someone that will convey it, teach it, organize it, implement it like me. But that could be a trap sometimes. And so, if you're happy with that business model, that's fine too. But I guess what I'm curious about is knowing that the workforce is depleted. The state itself is working at 50% capacity. Like, and that you have this incredible knowledge of something that is so worthwhile, but needs to get out to more businesses across America. How do you tackle that? Or is it okay for you right now? Hey, I'm in Wisconsin. I'm assuming you do business in other states as well, but have you hit a point where you're overwhelmed with too much work? How do you feel about those things that are strategically needs within the company of your consulting firm?
I think right now what I'm to be okay, so to be fairly honest, I think my homework for me is setting up better systems within my company because I have grown to the point where I need to do that of creating systems. I've created my company to be so adaptable that that doesn't work for growth. if that makes sense to you. I think it makes sense to every entrepreneur that
Mm-hmm.
you can't grow with being too flexible. And so that is my homework to move forward for growth, is to create better systems to bring more people on to hire. And then I guess I do have a high standard, and that is where I need to figure out. And it is a really hard space to hire, is finding experts in sales and use tax, and finding people that will peel away from the big firms to work in a small firm. And so that is my challenge. Um, and so, yeah, so I didn't want to voice that, but yeah, that is the
Oh,
challenge.
that's
And I
that's
think
fair.
that's what small firms are facing. Do you fold and sell out to a big firm? And I don't want to do that because none of the big firms operate like I do. And I don't want to do that.
No, and I like that. I think I know that we kind of, you know, I don't know if I'd say poo-pooed, but I guess there's some challenges with AI, right? There's still some wrinkles to iron out. There's some not so good, feedback and things compared to what you have grown to be an expert in, and you see it. So I think over the next 6, 12, 18 months, one of the strategies might be looking at it and, forgive me for being a little bit consultative here, but, I think one of the things is maybe matching up the workload with some of these other one of 30 or 50 or 100 of you that are in the United States, right? Like forming a small peer group, right, of you guys and gals that are specifically sales tax experts. And I shared with you my own accountant and guy that I work with, he is actually in that space. So it's so cool to meet someone else, and starting to work in that dynamic, right? And obviously, you all have a certain amount of capacity, right? You can't have unlimited clients come in. You probably reject some, I would think, every once in a while, and tell them you just don't have the capacity. But maybe you give them some FAQ stuff or some brochure or something like that, right? So I get it that you're building your platform, but that is a challenge, right? And Go for Shield community, this is a real world problem of a small business, right? Looking to grow, but not enough talent. And then how do you supplement your knowledge and put that into someone else, right? So one thing I
Mhm.
will say, there's a guy named Alex Ramosi. He talks about it a lot. He's like, to go from solopreneur to business owner, the thing is also thinking of it as, hey, you may know 100% and you're the best of the best of the best that you do, but could you get someone to 85%, 90% of what you do, right? And be okay with it because that's where scalability comes in, right? And growth and opportunity. And then maybe set up some mechanisms where the work that they do is then also reviewed in your process, in your workflow, so that you could have extreme confidence that, hey, that person that's doing it at 90%, 85% is then reviewed to get it to 98.8, right? So there's something to that effect. So does that resonate?
Yeah. The whole thing is I feel like what I do is really not that hard, to be honest. And I know this sounds crazy, but it's not. And my interns don't have a problem doing what I do. What they have a problem with is that I'm so well rounded and I can do many different things. And that's what they struggle with. And they find
Yeah.
that overwhelming. And that's where I'm having an issue. Nothing I do is hard. It's the well-roundedness. And that just blows my mind because I don't feel that's hard.
Well, and what do you truly mean when you're saying well-roundedness? What is that pain point?
Uh, that every day is a different day, that we do so many different things. We go out, we work with clients, we do business advising. Like, that's what I don't get. I don't know. Um, Everything I do is so simple. It's just that there's no exact roadmap. And so I don't know. I mean, that's just the interesting part. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I got to figure that out.
Well, and it's an interesting challenge, right? And you've
Hmm.
also, I guess, in some ways decided that your current pool of talent is interns at the college, right? And level, and that's kind of where you felt comfort. Um, Sometimes maybe a more seasoned, person comes in, and like you said, they want, your legs, your arms, and half the business. I think it's a measurable approach of, hey, what talent can you either joint venture with, set up an affiliate model, but still have supervision so that your brand, your name, your context of the way you do business can still be 100% valued, right, in the marketplace, but has a flow through someone else that also has that, like you said, well-roundedness and stuff. So I'm excited. I think it's an interesting time for you because ultimately what you've come upon in this world and that you've done for, now 6.5, almost 7 years, um, is unique. And I was actually thinking, well, how do you market it and stuff? But it's so interesting. Once you do what you do, it literally becomes its own marketing, voice, right? Because what business owner doesn't go to their other friends that own businesses? Hey, you need to talk to Holly. Like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, you just saved me. Like it's automatic, right? Especially when you make
right.
a big difference like that. So it'll be cool. I love to, it'll be cool to stay in touch and that and bring you back and hear kind of the growth of what you're going to look at and how you're going to do it. So, all right, Holly. Well, look, the ways that we end the podcast is CEO. So client experience, which I think, man, your heart has poured out today. I feel like it really shows how you do business is truly the client experience. So I'll give you 60 seconds on kind of the value proposition from your firm's perspective and your leadership. What does it mean to do business with Holly and your firm?
To do business with me means that I'm going to make sure that your company is taken care of and that we look at your employees and your business and take care of empowering your employees, training them, and making sure that your books are streamlined and your processes are streamlined and that you are compliant for sales tax, but also that your purchases and sales are well documented and taken care of and that you understand your business.
I love it. I love it. All right. The second one is E for engagement. And Holly, this one's a little bit different because everybody gives me a different answer. This is about Holly. So make it about you. Be a little bit selfish here. How do you like to engage? Are you a person that loves to break bread and go to dinner? Do you like to go to events? Like, what are ways that your clients, your vendors, your, independent contractors, your interns, how should they know how to engage with Holly?
I just like conversations anywhere, anytime, however it happens, just a good conversation. I just love talking and learning. So I just get excited about people's businesses and what they do and how they do it and about them. So that just gets me going. I don't know what it is. I've always been that way. I get excited about your business and what you do.
Okay, that's fair. So the superpower, I know throughout the interview you've said, you're a speaker, which is another great attribute of yours, right? Because a lot of people have a supreme fear of speaking. So that's awesome that that's your superpower. And it sounds like, hey, if you just call Holly and you want to have a genuine conversation and just talk through some things, that engages her immensely. So thank you for sharing that. Last one is operational excellence. Obviously, throughout the life cycle of your business from 2019 inception and what have you, I'm sure that either you've kept some tools, you've changed some tools, you've upgraded some tools. What are some of the tools, operationally speaking, of the business that you use? It could be the Monday.coms, the CRMs. What are some tools that you could share?
My biggest tool that I use right now is my calendar, is how I track everything and creating a to-do list. So um, that would be my biggest tool. And I just switched to Kintsugi for multi-state filing. So that's my other lifesaver. So that's helping me and my clients big time. So between my calendar and to-do list and Kintsugi for multi-state filing, that's organizing everything right now. So without that, I would be dead in the water.
All right, all right, and I'm sure that's evolved over the years. But you know, it's great to have, especially in this scenario where, like you said, there is some pain of finding the right talent. You know, putting the interns in a space where they feel they can take a bigger load off your shoulders, and then also finding other people around you. So I'm excited to hear the next steps over the next 18 months of kind of where you end up and start moving towards, especially with some of the video stuff you're doing, the FAQs, the platform, and those types of things to really educate the marketplace. So, what's the best way to get a hold of you, to contact you, to reach out to you, to do business with you? What would you say is the best way to do that?
Holly at salestaxlady.com or my website, salestaxlady.com.
I love
And
it.
and that whole no one ever knew my name, Holly Hoffman. They just always called me, oh, that's the sales tax lady. So I just embraced it.
Yeah. Hey, it's nowadays with social media, it's something that's a hook, a hashtag, a way of branding yourself. So really cool stuff. Like I said a few times now, it's felt like a genuine passion that you have, and I appreciate you coming on the Go CEO channel and sharing that with hopefully millions of business owners that'll see this and people that can really engage and say, oh, wow, Holly's genuine and what she's doing and authentic about what it is. And, not always the most exciting thing to talk about taxes and those types of things, but when you have someone with the conviction that you have, and then the actual, results that are coming out of it, it's pretty powerful. So thanks so much for coming on the Go CEO channel.
Sounds good. Thank you.